The U.S. Justice Department has released a heavily redacted tranche of some of the so-called Epstein files, the long-awaited documents related to its investigations into the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. According to CBS News, 3965 files were released today, totaling 3 gigabytes of data. Being named or pictured in the files is not an indication of wrongdoing. Many of those identified in other releases have denied any wrongdoing in relation to Epstein. Photos of the interiors of Epstein's homes, his overseas travels and celebrities. Photos of former U.S. President Bill Clinton, Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, Michael Jackson, Peter Mandelson, and Diana Ross are included in release. Being named or pictured in the files is not an indication of wrongdoing. Our American correspondent reports that President Trump is rarely mentioned in the files, which will be a relief to the White House. At the same time, there is no discussion of the new files released about Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, other Indian businessmen, or other top BJP leaders. However, a court document claims that Epstein introduced Trump to a 14-year-old girl at Mar-a-Lago. Trump has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing in relation to Epstein. The files are heavily redacted, with black boxes covering some faces, entire pages withheld, and personal details such as phone numbers and addresses covered. One photo included in yesterday's document release shows Ghislaine Maxwell posing in front of 10 Downing Street. She is alone, and there is no context provided with the photo about why she is there or when the image was taken. The latest files released by the U.S. Department of Justice, DOJ, contain a number of redactions. The DOJ says it was extremely cautious not to identify victims, so women's faces were blacked out on photos that were made public. Meanwhile, Democrats say the partial release violates the transparency law and criticize the extensive redactions. Epstein accuser Maria Farmer, whose 1996 complaint to the FBI was included in the files, told the media, "I feel like I've been acquitted." Prime Minister Narendra Modi's name appearing in emails connected to convicted U.S. child sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, released recently by U.S. authorities, has triggered a major political controversy in India. Evidence is emerging that Indian Prime Minister Modi, industrialist Anil Ambani, and BJP leader Hardeep Singh Puri were involved in the transactions of Jeffrey Epstein, who was arrested for sexually exploiting children and died in prison. More revelations emerged that Jeffrey Epstein pressured Steve Bannon to meet Indian Prime Minister Modi shortly before his death. Records of emails and text messages reveal previously unknown details about Epstein's efforts to broker influence on Indian geopolitics and his interactions with a senior leader of Modi's party. This report is a peek into Epstein's connections with India's elite, draws on documents recently released by the House Oversight Committee, as well as a new tranche of some 18,000 Epstein emails obtained by Drop Site News this week. That correspondence comes from the Yahoo inbox of Epstein. Some of the messages were reported on by Bloomberg News, but Bloomberg did not make the full cache public. Jeffrey Epstein offered to set up a meeting with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and former Trump White House chief strategist Steve Bannon in mid-2019. Less than 2 months before his arrest, according to a review of documents released by the U.S. House Oversight Committee. The documents, which reveal previously unknown details about the depth of Epstein's relationships with high-profile Indian political and business figures in the years prior to his death, also show Epstein corresponding about the India-Israel relationship with a powerful Indian billionaire who had entered into a joint venture with a state-owned Israeli defense firm. Epstein had close ties with powerful figures in the Israeli intelligence establishment, and his high-level interactions on India also came at a time when the bilateral relationship between New Delhi and Tel Aviv was beginning to accelerate. Following official state visits by Modi and Netanyahu in 2017 and 2018, in which the two signed cooperation agreements on cybersecurity, aviation, and energy, in 2019, India signed major arms deals with Tel Aviv to acquire advanced anti-tank and surface-to-air missiles. Today, India, which did not have formal ties with Israel until 1992, is the single largest customer for Israeli arms, with purchases unaffected by the genocide in the Gaza Strip. Several years before this relationship began to publicly blossom, Disclosures of his private calendars show that Epstein had several appointments with Hardeep Singh Puri, a senior leader of Modi's ruling BJP party. The appointments took place long after the financier had been convicted of sexual offenses, and while he was engaged in other global deal-making aimed at furthering the interests of the Israeli government and private firms tied to Israel intelligence. The recipient of Epstein's messages in 2019 pushing to set up a meeting with Modi is redacted in the House Oversight Committee releases of his communications. But the details match closely with the contemporaneous activities and locations of Steve Bannon. The unidentified person discussing Modi told Epstein that he was in Kazakhstan. Bannon was attending a conference there at the same time. The sender mentions working with Kobach and Kolfage, and that he is the chairman of an unnamed organization. At the time, Bannon was the chairman of the advisory board of We Build the Wall, a nonprofit that fundraised for a wall at the U.S.-Mexico border, a project he worked on with Chris Kobach and Brian Kolfage. Though Bannon had been fired from the White House in 2017, he remained influential in MAGA world, offering advice to Trump on political strategy. Bannon did not respond to a request for comment. On May 23, 2019, the day Modi won a commanding parliamentary majority and secured re-election as Prime Minister, Bannon messaged Epstein saying, "I'm doing a one-hour show for India on Modi while here bringing American Hindu guys with us." Epstein responded, "His focus wants to be stopping China." The following week, Bannon did an interview with the Indian news outlet WION. In the interview, Bannon discussed Modi extensively, and the importance of a U.S.-India relationship in the context of the U.S. economic war with China. Seeking to facilitate a meeting, Epstein pressed further. "I can set," Epstein wrote in a text. "You should meet with Modi." Bannon replied, "Please." Epstein followed by asking, "When can you do it?" At the time, Bannon had been one of the most vocal anti-China voices in conservative politics, calling China the greatest existential danger to the U.S. in an interview that May and demanding an escalated trade war to counter Beijing's global economic ambitions. The day after his message pushing for contact with Modi, Epstein sent another message to Bannon encouraging him to overcome any obstacles to the meeting. Epstein emphasized what he saw as the strategic importance of the relationship, while highlighting Bannon's well-known economic concerns about China. "My guy said to tell you that you are missing a great opportunity. Look at your underwear. It either says made in China or made in India. How is it possible that you guys don't understand shared goals?" The disclosures by House Oversight do not show any significant intervening correspondence between Bannon and Epstein on the subject. Hours later, Epstein wrote again, stating, "Modi on board." Modi's office did not respond to drop site's requests for comment. Epstein died in a jail cell in Manhattan that August. In September, Modi attended a joint rally with Trump in Houston. At the event in front of a packed stadium, Modi had said, "Ab ki bar Trump Sarkar," this time it'll be Trump's government, a play on his own election slogan Ab ki bar Modi Sarkar. The remark, which came as the 2020 presidential election cycle was heating up, was instantly controversial and criticized as a foreign leader's attempt to intervene in the U.S. election. In addition to Epstein's contacts with Bannon about Modi, the financier also had other interactions with powerful figures in Indian politics and business in the years prior to his death. In March 2017, an individual whose name was redacted by the House and whose identity could not be determined asked Epstein, "The White HSC announced 8 p.m. Modi's trip to D.C. Can you tell me WHN and the dates? Thanks." Epstein responded that Modi's visit to Washington, which was to be his first meeting with Trump, was a part of Israel's strategy and added, "Should know more after I return from Paris." Epstein later continued, "What I am told is that discussions rate Israel's strategy were dominating Modi dates. However, lots and lots of internal conflicts taking priority." The following day, an email account linked to Anil Ambani, an Indian business tycoon and brother of Asia's richest individual Mukesh Ambani, corresponded directly with Epstein. On March 30, 2017, Ambani emailed Epstein an article from Business Standard titled, "After Trump phone call, Goft weighs if Modi should visit U.S. early." He added, "Dear Jeffrey Info, Br Anil." Epstein replied, "India-Israel key not for email." Epstein's communications regarding India-Israel relations, both with the unnamed individual and with Ambani, came just weeks before ties between the two nations reached an unprecedented high point in July 2017, with Modi becoming the first Indian Prime Minister to visit Israel. That same year, India was reportedly the largest buyer of Israeli weapons, having bought $715 million worth of weaponry, according to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. As Modi's bonhomie with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu intensified on the back of a deepening military relationship, the Indian Prime Minister declined to meet with officials from the Palestinian Authority during his trip to Israel. The Palestinian Authority had traditionally maintained strong ties with New Delhi. Epstein's history in India stretched back at least to the 2000s. Private emails show Epstein arranging various deals beginning in 2006 with Indian businessmen with companies in Dubai, including an attempt to arrange the acquisition of a small share in a company owned by an Indian designer clothes magnate. That email is found in Epstein's Yahoo account, contents of which had previously been leaked to Bloomberg. DropSite has obtained thousands of emails from that account, provided to us by the whistleblower site Distributed Denial of Secrets. Another influential Indian who engaged with Jeffrey Epstein was Hardeep Singh Puri, a former president of the United Nations Security Council who is a minister in Modi's current cabinet. Puri is featured on Epstein's list of scheduled appointments at least 5 times between June 2014 and January 2017, according to documents released by the House Oversight Committee. Puri, who joined Modi's Hindu nationalist BJP party in January 2014, met with Epstein in June that year. Puri was joined in the meeting by Norwegian diplomat Terje Rød-Larsen, a close friend of Epstein. At the time, Puri was the vice president of the International Peace Institute, where Rød-Larsen, who played a part in the 1990s peace process between Israel and the Palestine Liberation Organization, was the president. Puri again met Epstein in September and October 2014, according to the schedules. The purpose of the meeting, or possibly another attendee, is redacted. On February 4, 2015, Epstein's calendar had a reminder that Puri was to arrive in New York that day from India. Epstein had appointments with Puri again in January 2016 and January 2017. In September 2017, Puri was sworn in as a minister in the Modi government. He currently heads India's Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. A September 2014 email that Epstein wrote to Catherine Rumler, former White House counsel for Barack Obama, briefly set off a firestorm on Indian social media this week after Puri's name was mentioned alongside a list of other notable public figures expected to be in New York for a host of events including the UN General Assembly, with Epstein writing, "Girls, careful, I will renew an old habit," in the email thread. The public response assumed that Epstein had meant that he was trafficking girls for the men listed, but the context of the exchanges shows that he was telling Rumler about the people he would be meeting from around the world. His line about girls and his old habit was in response to something separate she had said. But the level of outrage did compel a response from India's ruling party. A senior BJP leader responded on social media by saying, "Read the entire email thread, and you'll see there is no reference whatsoever to anyone being supplied with girls. Nothing in the conversation even points in that direction." Puri did not respond to a request for comment. Despite the apparent misinterpretation, the emails do show Epstein engaging in back-channel communications discussing Indian geopolitics with a range of influential individuals. Those contacts, coming alongside other efforts to make political and economic deals for Israel and other countries, appears to have continued up till the final months of his life. Although the second batch of files released does not mention Indian leaders and businesses, the release of thousands of files is a threat to India's accused. While Amit Shah is making killing calls in parliament and elsewhere on domestic issues,
उनको धैर्य रखना चाहिए मेरा जवाब सुनने का। इनकी एक बात का जवाब मैं दूंगा, मगर मेरे भाषण का क्रम वो तय नहीं कर सकते, मैं करूंगा क्योंकि मैं बोल रहा हूं मन।
Prime Minister Modi is being subjected to sexual harassment allegations internationally. The NTA government, which has long been plagued by disease and fear, is reaching a point where it is completely collapsing.